Welcome to Sivako, the road to Avatar. My name is Shaun Alexander, and I will be your guide to the world of Avatar and beyond. And with me today, I have a very special guest. So, special guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm David Rosen from the Piecing It Together podcast.
And it's a pleasure having you on, David. I'm so excited to have you over. And you're based in Vegas, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So you're my second guest from the States, so that's exciting. I feel like I'm making making the jump overseas.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, I've got a few Avatar themed questions before we get on to our main topic for today. The first of which is, when did you first see Avatar?
Opening day, of course. I went opening day and probably again like 2 or 3 days later, I think.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from a lot of guests that opening day, or certainly within the first few weeks before that busy Christmas period.
Sure,
And
sure.
was do you remember if it was a 3D showing?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, like IMAX 3D or something like that. And yeah, I ended up seeing it like 3 times, I think, 3 or 4 times in the theater. So I was pretty excited at the time.
Nice, that's really cool. So, is there any scenes in particular that stand out to you?
I mean, I there's so much. I mean, it's just so much a work of vision from James Cameron, and I mean, growing up in the 80s and 90s, like, of course, is such a huge figure in filmmaking, and so it was just exciting to see this whole grand idea that he brought to the big screen and just how visually stunning it all was. I mean, of course, the action sequences would just be the most exciting parts, though.
Yeah, of course. And as you say, like he had such a record beforehand, it was hardly expected to be a bad thing to go into.
Sure.
And the final question for you in regards to Avatar for now is that what's your excitement level for The Way of Water?
It's it wavers up and down. Like, I'm definitely I'm in an up period right now. I'm very much looking forward to it, but I've certainly lost interest over the years, and I think, there's probably a lot of people in my boat there that feel the same way. I tried watching it at home, and it just didn't really work the same as it did in the theater. But that being said, it's such a theatrical experience, the first one, and I still to this day am a big theater guy. Like, I watch everything in the theater if I can help it. And so I'm looking forward to doing that whole experience again with this. So you should never bet against James Cameron.
Yeah, that's the. I feel like that should be my motto basically at this point. Anyone who ever questions him, don't bet against him, please, for your own money's sake.
Exactly.
And that's going to bring us actually nicely onto our topic, which is we've had like a recent development. There was Empire magazine recently come out with an article and a whole load of new pictures and information about Avatar: The Way of Water. But there was a little bit of detail that came out which has kind of got people talking, which was that James Cameron said he might not direct Avatar 4 or 5. I have the direct quote here, which was, I've got some other things I'm developing as well that are exciting. I don't know if that's after 3 or after 4. I want to pass the baton to a director that I trust to take over. So there's still like a hint that he might stay on. I've got a feeling that knowing him, it will probably get to about it'll probably get to the time Avatar 3 releases and he'll say, no, 4 and 5 are mine, I've got it. So on initial thoughts, what's your feeling towards this news?
Yeah, I think even though this is going to be a fun conversation with what we're doing today, I do think he's gonna end up doing all of them. It's his baby, it's his grand idea. Like, to dedicate this many years of his life and career to the first three. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't see it through.
Yeah, it's sort of it would seem almost like a bit sad not to see him finish it off as well in that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Now the question is, and that was a question that the two of us are going to discuss today, is who out there could actually direct Avatar 4 and 5? It's a big ask. I feel like we're putting a lot of pressure on whoever has that job.
Yeah,
But
that,
we've
that that's a big undertaking for anybody, for sure.
Yeah, and we've come up with list of five each, and we're going to have a little discussion, see what we think of them. So, David, would you like to take it away with your first pick?
Well, I'm gonna go with what I at least think is probably the most obvious one. I don't know if it's the best one, but it's the one that would make the most sense given, what happened a few years ago with Alita: Battle Angel, and that's Robert Rodriguez. And Rodriguez is an interesting director. He's done some, like, incredible stuff, including Alita: Battle Angel. I love that movie. I think it's just so insanely over the top and ridiculous, but, like, so much fun, and the visuals are just incredible. I actually got to see that, not in IMAX 3D, but Dolby 3D, which they don't really do very often, and it's probably, like, the best use of 3D that I've ever seen. Like, it just looks so cool. Um, but yeah, Robert Rodriguez, though, aside from that, has been, like, just kinda all over the map lately, between his, like, kids stuff, like the Spy Kids, and then the Star Wars TV stuff, which I actually haven't watched. I don't really watch much TV. I watch mostly movies. Um, so, like, I'm not really quite sure what his style is right now. It just seems to be, like, doing various different stuff. So, for that, it almost feels like he could just fit as, like, a surrogate director for Cameron, and especially with what he did with Alita: Battle Angel, it's like maybe he can just see his vision through, and so maybe that would make him a good choice even without the history of what Robert Rodriguez has generally brought to films on his own.
Yeah, you know what? I fully agree with you on Robert Rodriguez. Especially with Alita, I think that is a great movie. I really enjoyed it, and it does feel like this sort of situation is like almost playing out to have Rodriguez
Right.
take over, because the quote is basically saying that, I want to pass the baton on to a director that I trust, and it's what he did with Alita. Cameron wanted to direct it originally, and
Yeah.
Rodriguez took over for him, but Cameron's still able to stay on, co-write, and produce. So Cameron gets still his way in that sense. And honestly, I think you're right. It's Rodriguez is an interesting one because he has jumped around a lot, and certainly in recent years because of the Star Wars projects as well.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
sort of hard to decide. Does he have that distinct style anymore? The one sort of you remember from his days doing Spy Kids and machete films and things like that.
Yeah, and, like, is that what Avatar needs? It's hard to say, but if he's Robert Rodriguez, the guy who took over Alita from James Cameron, it becomes a good fit.
Yeah, I think I agree on that. So from my first pick, and this is also interesting because it sort of came up within quotes for Empire. I've gone for Peter Jackson. Um, Cameron likened his writing process of writing the Avatar sequels as similar to having to basically write the Lord of the Rings books and then make them afterwards. So I can see how Peter Jackson could be a good fit in terms of both the scale and attention to detail. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, I would argue, is still one of the best works of art in cinema there is. In terms of scale and that epic battles and things like that, and I feel like Avatar screams out for that sort of thing. What's your thoughts on Peter Jackson?
I mean, I love Peter Jackson, and another thing that would make him a good fit would be just his love of like creatures and stuff like that. And that was also one of the things that I loved about the first Avatar was seeing what kind of creatures inhabit Pandora, and so everything he's done with King Kong and the Lord of the Rings movies and even his splatter movies, just having all kinds of like cool creatures and that kind of creature design type stuff would be fun to see. The only thing with Peter Jackson is he already is such a fully formed like filmmaker, like so imaginative and such a distinct style. I wonder how much the two of them would clash, but I mean, I'd love to see him do a grand sci-fi epic like this.
Yeah, I see what you mean because they his films do have such a distinct style. What I did find interesting is obviously more recently he's been doing like more documentary work, or well, I say documentary, it's restoring documentary
Sure. Yeah.
with They Shall Not Grow Old, and also the Beatles documentary he worked on for with Disney Plus. and those use technology in interesting ways, which I know obviously James Cameron's a huge fan of. Anytime any sort of technology gets advanced, he's always right up for it. It sounds like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The 2 of them are definitely, like, 2 of the filmmakers most interested in pushing technology forward.
Yeah, and as well with just working with. I'm trying to remember. I believe Avatar's working with Weta. I might be wrong.
I wanna say they are.
Yeah, I think they are. So obviously, and Peter Jackson's as ingrained into Weta as I can imagine anyone could be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, would you like to give your second choice?
So my second choice is probably the least likely on my list, because again, another filmmaker with just his own thing that I think would probably clash a little bit, but I think there's enough there that would work, and that's Michael Bay. Love him or hate him, Michael Bay makes big, over the top movies, which that's kind of what Avatar is. And also, there's a lot of, criticism. Yes, a lot of people think of Michael Bay and they think, big explosions in America, rah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. But then underneath the surface, there's a lot of like criticism of, what's happening in this country and all that stuff, especially like this year with Ambulance, was very critical. Then stuff like Pain and Gain, which totally takes down the whole American dream type thing. There's so much of that, like, criticism of the American military complex and everything like that goes with that, that I feel like there's ideas that Michael Bay would love to play with, while also having big explosions and giant action sequences, which, he's known for. And, he's also loves pushing technology forward, another one of those guys. And, he also only has one thing on the docket right now, which is Robopocalypse, which, sure sounds like a transition point to something over the top and sci-fi like Avatar.
Yeah, and obviously with those Transformers films he's done before, that their CGI is also arguably some of the best still out there. Those first few Transformers, they look immaculate still.
Yeah.
Even in the Michael Bay style of uh, Dutch angles, a lot of spinning shots. He
Yeah.
he's got such a distinct style. I would love to see it in the Avatar world. I don't know if it would work, but I'd be so curious to see it.
It would clash a lot, but it would be exciting and fun, I think.
In my mind, I'm like, if he directed like a small, if he just directed like the action sequences of it, I can only imagine like the kind of action we would get and how much mayhem it would be.
Oh my god, yeah.
That's where the term mayhem comes from, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
As well.
absolutely.
Perfect. And you know what? I agree. He does actually have something to say with his movies. I know a lot of people will argue he doesn't,
Mhm.
but he honestly does have a general dislike into a lot of American ideals that put them on this pedestal. And I think he wouldn't mind being able to put that into a different sandbox. I think he'd have a great time with it.
Yeah, you know what? Another thing, I didn't even think about this beforehand, but, they both could bond over being made fun of on South Park. So, they've got
maybe,
that.
maybe that's it. We'll just look for like any director who's been on South Park.
Yeah, that's right.
Does George Clooney count, or are they just making fun of him as a actor?
Yeah, let's get George Clooney as a dog in the new Avatar, that would be good.
Amazing. So I'm gonna put out a slightly newer director, someone who's worked mostly in TV, which was Kate Herron.
Mm.
She's worked on Sex Education and most recently Loki. I know you did mention that you haven't been keeping up with the TV shows. I don't know if Loki has been on your radar at all.
I randomly caught the last one, the one where they introduce what's his name, who might be the big villain of future movies, I don't know.
Kang.
Yeah, there you go.
And I really Loki's not my favorite of the MCU shows. I like WandaVision the most out of them. But for me, Loki has a grand scale at times, which I think really matches to what Avatar is all about, which is this expanse of the world. Um, Avatar is interesting to me in that there are these little moments which are very personal, but you need to be able to have that giant scope to view the world and everything that's going on around it. And I think in Loki, it really did have a bit of both of that. And I think as well with the Disney connection, I think it's something that could be on the cards.
Mm.
It's a tough one because the jump from TV to movies, and obviously this would be like the biggest jump you could possibly make, is already big, and this is just made it twice as big.
Sure, sure, absolutely. I mean, working in that, the Marvel world, I mean, anybody who goes through that's probably gonna be somewhat like a boot camp into having to deal with just nonstop visual effects headaches and everything that goes with that to have to make a movie that way. I don't think I've seen Kate Herron's other work though. So I'd be interested to check out some of it and see how it what the style is of some of that.
Yeah, Sex Education is really good. I think she directed it's like 4 or 5 episodes of that, so it's definitely worth looking out for.
Right on.
Let's move on to your third pick then.
All right, my third pick is James Wan. I think James Wan is a really interesting director, known mostly for horror, but when he tries his hand at action stuff like Furious 7, which is just so insanely big and over the top and exciting, or the action sequences towards the end of Malignant. Spoiler alert for that movie, but also of course Aquaman. He shows that he can really have fun with doing action, and he also just has, like, such a command of special effects. Aquaman is another movie that, some people just don't really get, I think. Like, to me, I love Aquaman, it's my favorite of the DC movies, honestly, it's one of my favorite superhero movies, period, just because it's such an insane work of vision, and the first thing I thought of when I watched Aquaman was Avatar. Just, like, this vision of a world that is so insane and ridiculous and just unlike anything you've really seen elsewhere, and it all coming together so, like, just wonderfully, and I think that really kinda shows that James Wan is someone who, when given the tools and the, insane budget that a movie like Aquaman or Avatar has, can really pull things together and make something that is a true director's vision, and I think that's something that's important to Cameron, and so that would make someone like Juan important to Cameron.
It is interesting that, and you mentioned obviously his James Wan did start off really in horror, and that's for some of it that's still what he's most known for. And Cameron did have a sort of similar path, didn't he? He started off with
Sure.
Terminator, did Aliens and things like that, and yeah, I count James Wan as one of my favorite directors at the minute. I think he anything he has his name attached to, I'm always interested in because I always feel like it's going to be a treat, whether it's visually, the story, or just going pure craziness. And Malignant's a great example of that.
The best.
And it really was. I really had a great time with that. And I I remember I was texting my sister because she'd seen it before me, and I was watching it at home, and she was like, "Oh, message me as you watch it." And I was like messaging, and just my messages started to get more and more bizarre because I just couldn't put into words what I was
Yeah,
watching.
absolutely.
So yeah, definitely check out *Malignant* if you haven't. By the way, anyone who's
Yes,
listening.
please do.
And yeah, I agree. The one thing I would say is Aquaman's really interesting to me is that I really enjoy Aquaman. I think it is a very good film. There's something about the underwater which I it doesn't mesh with me as well, and
Mm,
that's maybe why I'm so excited about The Way of Water. In that the underwater segments look so fantastic and different from anything we've seen before, and um, I do. Then again, James Wan would be working with with James Cameron's underwater technology, so that
sure.
probably wouldn't even be an issue.
Yeah, I think, Aquaman needed to blend amazing CGI with, it still is supposed to be a comic book movie, whereas The Way of Water is gonna look as real can be for CGI, basically.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. I think maybe I'm being a little harsh on Aquaman and its underwater shots.
It's still Aquaman.
It's still Aquaman. So for me, I'm going to bring up my next pick, which will be Alfonso Cuarón, who, for
Mm.
those who don't know, directed Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. He directed Gravity and Children of Men, and I feel like that list is a pretty good list of films to have on your resume if you're trying to be director of one of the biggest blockbusters in the world. Um, I still think the third Harry Potter is the best one in terms of style and having its own personality. And I like the idea because these Avatar movies look like they're going to move forward and focus more on the children of Jake and Neytiri. That's just my natural feeling from what we've seen so far.
Sure.
And Alfonso Cuarón's work with Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint, and the rest of the cast on Prisoner of Azkaban sort of suggests that he could easily do that again. I think he would easily mesh well with that. He clearly loves technology, as shown with Gravity, where they had some just insane shots in that. And Children of Men is just like an incredible sci-fi film. So I would not complain at all if I saw his name thrown in to direct the last two.
Yeah, I would not complain if I saw his name on any movie, honestly. Like, Alfonso Cuarón is just amazing, and, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when I saw that you were gonna bring up Cuarón, that made me think that he is a great choice because I actually haven't seen I I've seen some of the Harry Potter movies, but I'm not like a real follower of that series. But Children of Men and Gravity, like talk about intense. And I remember like the action sequences in Avatar being like super intense. And I feel like if nothing else, he would definitely be a good pick for that, but also just because he's just such an incredible director.
Yeah, and I think intensity is like a major thing to bring as well because obviously where we're watching the CGI, you need to bring that extra level of intensity to make it feel more real.
Yeah.
That's always a tough thing to sort of match up because I know plenty of CGI sort of heavy CGI effects movies where there's not enough intensity or weight to it, and suddenly it doesn't feel like it matters what we're watching because you're the rubber banding around everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So up number 4 for you.
My number 4, somebody who's had a pretty big year this year with the Batman, it's Matt Reeves. But before the Batman is really where I see the examples of him being a good pick here, especially Dawn and War for the Planet of the Apes, which are the best uses of CGI I've ever seen, I think. His work with Andy Serkis, bringing Caesar to life is just absolutely incredible, and just all of the effects with the apes that's happening really show that he can tell a genuine story with computer-generated characters, and, a story that really makes you feel and that has emotion with these characters, and I don't think anybody has done it as well as Matt Reeves has with those movies, especially War for the Planet of the Apes, which I think is one of the best, like, blockbuster type movies of the last decade. Um, Also Cloverfield, which, you know, I love Cloverfield and truly one of the most impressive versions of taking a creature that's completely generated in computer graphics, but to make it feel so real. And part of that is the whole found footage angle of, what Cloverfield's doing. But the fact that it still looks like a real thing being caught on camera, like, just shows that he is somebody who has, I guess it would be like the imagination combined with the command of the effects work that I think could really do something special with this kind of a world. And then, the Batman, I'm not the biggest fan of the Batman. I thought it was good, but I think it shows that he's like ready to kick things up and make some bigger movies.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially on the Planet of the Apes points. I think those films are just incredible. I think that trilogy itself is very underappreciated.
Yeah,
It's never
absolutely.
discussed as like one of the best trilogies when always Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, those sort of ones. But I think that trilogy of Planet of the Apes films is remarkable, especially with how it improved. Like the CGI for Andy Serkis and the other apes is immaculate. It
Oh yeah.
is so emotive as well, which I think is a huge thing. And it's made me really wonder, like, man, how long till Andy Serkis gets in on some Avatar work?
Yeah.
Come on, give him something. I feel like he'd absolutely kill it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He would be awesome. Actually, he should be an honorable mention on this list. I mean, granted, his Venom movie wasn't that good, but he sure does love, these kinds of characters, so,
That is such a great shout. I'm gonna add that in my mind as an
yeah.
extra one to have because that would work so well. Gosh, that's a great thought. And yeah, I think the one thing with Matt Reeves I worry about, and I don't know if that's just because obviously the Batman's the most recent one, is that Batman film is very dark. Not in
Mm,
terms of color palette, it is dark in terms of that, but
yeah,
it's very serious. And I don't know if Avatar is as serious. It's serious in itself. It's not joking around, taking like making fun of itself,
yeah.
but there is a light-heartedness to a lot of Avatar, and I don't know if Matt Reeves has that as much in his locker.
Yeah, that's a good point. His stuff is all, like, so far anyway, has been very serious and does not have that, like, playful, family-friendly thing.
Yeah, and obviously, like these Avatar films are family-friendly affairs. That's why it made so much money, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so my fourth pick is Nikki Caro. Now, she's a New Zealand director, which is part of the reason I chose her. I know Avatar's been spending a lot of time down New Zealand, Australia way for doing a lot of their filming. And it's a lot of about on her resume has been interesting. She did Whale Rider back in I think 2002, which obviously the sort of water connection there and connection to
Mhm.
nature as well, I think could be quite important. As well as Zookeeper's Wife, which I think that was Jessica Chastain. Um, it was Jessica Chastain and Bryce Dallas Howard. Got ginger blindness there for a second. But I really enjoyed that film, and more recently, she did the Mulan live action remake, which,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
despite probably not being, it's not the best of the live action remakes, it had a large scale, epic quality to it, which I haven't really seen a lot of lately. When you're trying to I was looking through directors and trying to find people who'd done big scale films where it felt epic and large, and there wasn't a huge list really. It felt like a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I feel like the
Mhm.
the time of the epic has passed a bit.
Yeah, yeah, it does seem that way. Other than Marvel stuff, which that doesn't get, you don't get the director's vision really.
Yeah, that's it. And I think even the Marvel stuff, it's sort of the epicness of that is has been a little lost since we've had Endgame because nothing matches up to it. Everything feels a
Sure.
little bit too small scale now.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does.
All right, and I know you've got a exciting one for your final pick.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think you could have this conversation without talking about Catherine Bigelow. It might be almost cheesily obvious given their history, but at the same time, it is a real genuinely good pick. I mean, Bigelow is such a great director of action movies. The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 are just so visceral and just incredible action. But then Strange Days, which I just revisited the other day, is so cool and so full of interesting sci-fi ideas and shows her working in this kind of a world like just more of a human earth version, but I mean still it's like kind of similar ideas being explored there. And, I think she kinda just has such a interestingly well-rounded but short filmography. She doesn't work that much, and I think that she, needs to do some big, big things, and it would be really exciting to see, and, again, maybe it's a little corny, but after the whole Oscars Avatar versus Hurt Locker, it would be like an awesome Hollywood story that they came together and ended up making the final sequels together.
It almost feels a little too poetic to happen,
It
almost,
is.
doesn't it?
It is, but we love movies, we love Hollywood, we love, the whole art of cinema and movie making. Why not have a poetic, like, one for the ages,
I can just imagine that Avatar 5 wins Best Picture and the two of them have to get to share an Oscar on stage together.
and the tears just flowing.
Oh, it's written in the stars now. But I agree, Bigelow's work is really exciting to me. Certainly her stuff from the 90s. I love Point Break. Strange Days in
Oh,
the
yeah.
90s, I'm sure it was as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, 96.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like those two Point Break and Strange Days are immaculate, absolutely incredible. And she has definitely taken like a more grounded, earthly tone with her more recent work, like Hurt Locker and Detroit as well, more recently.
yeah,
And I don't know if those tones work as well with the Avatar brand, but I
yeah,
certainly could see the likes of something like Strange Days working really well with it. I think, as you said, there's like some similarities in theme in there
yeah.
about the sort of way you view the world, and I think she could really do something interesting with that.
Absolutely, yeah. She's a really interesting filmmaker, and like I said, she hasn't done like I mean, she's got a great filmography, but she just doesn't work that often. And it would be great to see her do something bigger.
Yeah, yeah, I think she could handle the scale. I don't think that would be a problem for her.
Yeah,
She's clearly got a handle on being able to film large epic moments and certainly the smaller character moments too. That's all within her wheelhouse. So I think it's just about whether she would be up for it. I don't know what their relationship is like nowadays,
yeah, hard to
and I
say.
don't. I'd be too scared to ask if I'm honest as well. So for my final pick, and I think this is the pick that I'd be like over the moon with, and it was Ang Lee. I think he could do something incredible with Avatar. I
Oh yeah.
rewatched Life of Pi the other day,
Mm,
and there is some of the sequences in that that work so incredible with the 3D elements, as well as these nighttime shots with fish glowing in the ocean, and it just feels like there's some sort of like connection between this and Avatar. I don't know why, but in my soul, I was feeling it.
yeah, Ang Lee is an interesting filmmaker too. Like such a weird, varied filmography, but yeah, Life of Pi as far as effects works, incredible stuff. I James Cameron isn't doing the 120 frames per second thing, is he? 'Cause I know Ang Lee was messing around with that.
I don't think he is. That feels like it doesn't feel like a James Cameron thing to me. I think he's like, no, camera's good how it is.
Yeah.
I've got other things to worry about.
That's the one thing that would worry me with him, doing Avatar. I mean, that whole look is so weird, and I don't think it works the way people think it's supposed to work. I don't know, but still, it is an incredible filmmaker, and I think that would be a really interesting choice for sure.
Yeah, because obviously he's done things like Brokeback Mountain in the past,
Mhm.
and most recently he did Gemini Man, which, as you said, it used the higher frame rate.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly enjoy it in Gemini Man, but I actually really enjoyed it. He did this one, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, I think it was, or
I
something
never
along
got
that
to
line.
see that. Yeah, I
I
remember
thought
that
that was
though.
a really interesting way of using the higher frame rate. They use it only in specific moments rather than throughout the whole film, and I think that just it worked because it was focusing on sort of his trauma from being at war and
Mm,
using that higher frame rate in those moments. Whereas experiencing the trauma, I think it really helped push it further because I don't know if it's because it's disorientating with the higher frame rate and
yeah,
just puts you in the mindset a little bit more.
interesting. Alright.
Um, Before we sort of wrap things up, I did have a little quick fire round where I've written down a list of 10 directors, which I'm going to throw your way, and I want you to give a 1 to 5 how excited you are. One being the never touch this movie, and five, please direct this.
Okay.
So first up, George Miller.
Oh, boy. 5. Why how can you say anything otherwise?
I know, right? It feels rude, but I didn't actually choose George Miller as one of my main five picks.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that George Miller was 10 years older than James Cameron, which made me
Oh,
sort of think,
yeah.
oh yeah, wow, that's James Cameron's a lot younger than I thought he was.
He'll be, like, 90 and still doing stuff like this.
Oh yeah, definitely. Ryan Johnson.
I love Ryan Johnson, but I'm gonna go more like 3-ish. I mean, I love The Last Jedi. That's my favorite of the Star Wars movies. Like, he's great. I just wanna see him do some smaller stuff again. So,
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I like that he's doing his Knives Out thing.
yeah.
That's exciting me. I love the
Yeah.
first Knives Out, and I can't wait for the second one.
Yeah.
Up next is the attempt to dethrone James Cameron off his box office throne, the Russo brothers.
It was 1 to 5, right?
Yep.
Can I make it a 0?
If you want to, go for it.
That's a 0.
Oh, is that any particular reason?
I don't know that they're actually directors. I think they're just,
Ooh,
they're just making a product, like, I want a filmmaker to make the next Avatars.
yeah, I can understand that. I think it'll be interesting to see. Is it the Grey Man they're doing
The
for
Gray
Netflix
Man,
this year?
which just looks like, "Hey, I've seen action movies before. I can make one of those." Like,
Yeah, like I'm really curious if it's gonna actually have any sort of meat to it.
Right.
So far, the trailer did not give me anything that I was interested in.
I
It
love the
gave me a lot of
cast.
trailer moments, and yeah, I love the
Yeah,
cast. It looks so
but
good. Like I want those actors working together.
yeah.
Maybe just not on this film.
Exactly.
So we talked about let's have John Favreau next.
Jon Favreau is an interesting one. I mean, I'm gonna go 4 just because I know he would do a great job, but he's also, like, it's another one where it's like, I'd rather see him go back to doing some smaller things again, like, why is this where Jon Favreau's career has gone? Like, I don't necessarily want him to be doing Avatar 4 and 5. I want him to maybe do something interesting that's, like, different for him.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's since he's done all the Iron Man ones, he's sort of been Disney's like play tester with any new technology. Because obviously he
Yeah,
did like Jungle Book and then The Lion King, and obviously Mandalorian's been his as well. And but my favorite film of his is like Chef. I
yeah.
absolutely adore that film, and I'd love to see him do more like small scale ones like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and by the way, he was on my potential list. It's just I just didn't wanna include him because I wanna see him do something else. He's, like, so stuck in that Disney thing right now.
Yeah, it feels like it's such a safe choice. Like it couldn't have been. He would do an amazing job, but you would know what to expect going into it in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's talk about the director of the latest Marvel movie. Let's have Taika Waititi.
Oh, I'm mixed on Taika. I mean, I'm gonna see the new Thor this weekend, most likely at the time of this recording, and, I'm so just mixed on him. I'm gonna go with, like, let's say a 3. I don't really jive with his sense of humor too much, but I mean, visually he does some interesting stuff, so maybe it could be cool. And it's hard to say, where these stories are going to take us. I mean, we kind of have this idea of like it's going to explore their kids, and we know it's going to go underwater, but that all seems to be in number 2. So we have no idea where 3 is going to go, and then 4, and then 5. So it, who knows where this story is going to take us? Maybe it will get more psychedelic and weird, like in these past 2 Thor movies. I don't know. It's hard to say with him, like what exactly what he would bring to it.
Yeah, I think for me, if they were going for a smaller scale for like 4 or 5, which they're not going to do a small scale Avatar movie. I don't
No,
think.
no.
I think Taika would be a great choice for his work on like Hunt for the Wilder People. I think that sort of thing could really gel well with Avatar, the world of Avatar, if we were just focusing on like this group of kids who are exploring this absolute bonkers world. But I just don't think we're getting that sort of Avatar movie anytime soon. It would it would be a many years down the line. At which point, who knows where we will be.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Up next, I like this one. He was almost on my list. Brad Bird.
Ooh, I love Brad Bird. Let's go 4 on that one. I Brad Bird's just such an interesting director. I mean, it done so much like varied kinds of projects, and I'm not quite sure he'd be right for Avatar, but everything he does is great.
Yeah, he's such an interesting one to me because I don't think he does. I don't really think he's not done a bad film yet, and
Right.
I suppose the worst that people will say is he did Tomorrowland, but I actually really enjoyed Tomorrowland, and I think it's got that sort of environmental message that
Mhm.
James Cameron likes to pushing his film. So I could that was where I sort of saw his expertise coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got Patty Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins, I'm torn on because like Wonder Woman 1984 was so bad, but the first one was great. I'm not quite sure Patty Jenkins what a Patty Jenkins movie is like. I haven't quite figured that out from her particular filmography. So like I don't know, I'm gonna go 2 on that, but like I'd like to see more from her and kind of get more of an idea of what she does.
Yeah, because we're meant to be getting that Star Wars. I think it's like a Rogue Squadron movie from her, and I feel
Right.
like that might help us get an idea more of what her filmmaking style is. Obviously, yeah, as you
Yes.
say, those Wonder Woman films, the quality on them does vary quite a bit,
Sure.
and it doesn't really, yeah, give a flavor of who she is as a director as much as we'd kind of hoped to. Um, and also, she's sort of only been able to do those recently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chloe Zhao, director of Eternals, and she did Nomadland as well.
Yeah, yeah, she's a great director, but, Eternals is so not good, but, at the same time, I do think she would be a really good fit. I think she'd be perfect for Avatar, and I she's another one that was on my list of possibilities when I was making my list of 5. Um, I I think she'd be a pretty good fit with this. Like, I'm gonna go 4. It's only not a 5 because Eternals didn't work out, but again, I feel like that's another one where it's like, these Marvel projects, the director doesn't really get to do what they maybe want to do, or maybe they get like there's like a push pull in the process between the whole corporate product machine, and so it's hard for the final product to like really come out the way that the director would want it to.
Yeah, I think she is one of the examples of a director who, outside of Marvel, is such a strong director that she could easily take on a project like this, or like a project like this,
Yeah,
and make it her own in a way, while still adhering to what's before it. As you say, like Eternals is a tough one because she had a lot to deal with on that film. It felt like, in terms of like pushing and pulling what she had to include, what and it felt like there was two different movies in there in a way.
yeah.
Her one, which I really enjoy her part, like the bits which I can tell were like her heart and soul into that movie, and other parts where it's like, oh, this is the Marvel bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's shown like, between Nomadland and The Rider, um, you know, wanting to do very human stories versus something like Eternals, wanting to do something, big and special effects and blockbustery. Also this Dracula thing that she's I think working on now. So I mean, she's got both sides of that, which both sides need to be a part of an Avatar story. So, again, I do think she's a really good pick.
I got two left. The first of which is Ryan Coogler.
Coogler's interesting. I like a lot of his movies. Um, I do think like with Black Panther, the effects are where it kind of falls apart, and effects are so important. Like the use of visual effects are so important to Avatar that it kind of would make me worried about him being the pick. But at the same time, uh, i- dealing with Cameron on as producer, it'd probably be working together and all that. So I mean, maybe that would be alleviated there. I'm gonna go with a 3, but I do really like Kugler, and I'm always interested to see what he's gonna do next.
Yeah, he's like one of those directors that as soon as I hear he's sort of any way involved in a project, I'm immediately there. He seems
Yeah,
to he seems to know what he's doing, and I'm always there for it. And he gets together some incredible casts as well.
yeah, for sure.
And my final pick is Lana Wachowski.
Oh yeah, Lana Wachowski. I mean, let's put it this way, it would never happen as far as I'm concerned because it's like it's too perfect, but let's go 5 all the way. Like I would be all in on that, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it'd be like George Lucas directing a Star Trek movie or something. Like it just, like that this is just like it can't happen.
Yeah, you're trying to cross over too many excitement levels there because
Yeah.
um, obviously the Matrix is the Matrix
Yeah,
in all forms. But stuff like Cloud Atlas and even Speed Racer, the sort of scale and excitement that those sort of films can get, it
yeah,
shows that she can easily take on a project like Avatar and basically make it just as incredible as James Cameron could.
absolutely, yeah.
Is there any other like wild suggestions that you could think of? Obviously, we did briefly mention Andy Serkis. I think that's a great shout.
Oh, yeah, right? That I hadn't thought of that beforehand, but it should have been on both of our lists, really. That's such
Really
a
is. I've
interesting
embarrassed
one.
myself.
I'll just throw in, Guillermo del Toro, why not? I mean, go back to Hellboy for action and creatures.
Oh, and Pacific Rim for like the scale as well.
Mhm.
There you
Absolutely.
go. That works.
I was trying to think of, like, female action directors, and, like, I was having trouble. I mean, unfortunately, I just haven't had that much opportunity in this, world, but, Kathy Yan did a great job on Birds of Prey. Incredibly, unique and fun and colorful. I don't know if it's exactly the right fit for Avatar, but, I mean, she was the first one that kinda came to mind as far as that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of hers. I think Birds of Prey is a great film. The best, it's the best use of Harley Quinn so far. I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then the last one I had, which was actually, I told a friend that I was doing this, and he suggested it, and I thought it was really good. Miguel Sapochnik, who did a bunch of the bigger episodes of Game of Thrones, but also the movie Finch with Tom Hanks and a robot and a dog, which I love that movie. It's such an
Oh, I haven't
interesting.
seen that. I need to check that one out.
It's really good and, like, really under the radar, and nobody seemed to talk about it, but, certainly I didn't actually watch Game of Thrones, but, certainly as far as, like, big and, huge sets with lots of extras and, giant stuff happening, I think you could see how somebody who directed some of their bigger episodes would be a good fit.
Yeah, I feel like there is that definitely that possibility that someone who's been working in that sort of TV sphere can get picked up and basically turned into a little mini James Cameron, basically
Sure.
dragged along for the whole of filming of Avatar 3, and well, depends if James decides to make 4 or not, and
Yeah.
basically become a little surrogate for him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's a great place to lead off because I think that's a pretty impressive selection there. But I would love to hear from anyone else. Send us a tweet. Let us know how wrong we are about that. I'm sure you will. Uh, but it's been a pleasure talking to you, David. It got me really excited for films which are way too far ahead of now. I've
Yeah.
still got two other ones to hopefully get through, and that's if 4 and 5 even get made.
God knows how this world, the actual Earth world will be by that point, but we'll see.
We can only hope so. I was talking to someone on an earlier episode and we were saying, "Oh, we'll be watching Avatar 5 from our bunkers."
Yeah,
And James Cameron will just stream them through cyberspace or wherever we're connected to at that point.
yeah, yeah. Some of that Catherine Bigelow Strange Days stuff going
Oh
on.
yes, I can't wait.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, David. Where can people find you?
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. People can find Piecing It Together wherever they listen to podcasts, and you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod.
And I got to say, your podcast is great fun. I love those little connections between movies and things like that. It's like a weird obsession of mine to try and figure out. Oh, this feels real familiar. Where do I feel like I recognize this from? So it's
Well,
such a
thank you,
great
thank
concept.
you. I appreciate that, and maybe we'll get you on the show sometime.
I would love that. It would be a great honor to be on there.
Awesome.
I do have one final question. I have been asking this of every single guest. Unfortunately for you, this is probably going to be the most random question in the world. If you by any chance get invited to the Avatar Way of Water London premiere, can I be your plus one, David?
I would ask no one else.
Oh, thank you so much. Because I'm asking every single guest. Because if I do, eventually someone will get invited, and I can be a plus one. Yay!
Yeah, you have to put it out there, otherwise it's not gonna happen.
It's like the lottery. You got to try. If you don't try,
Mhm.
you don't succeed.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And you can find myself at Avatar Pod on Twitter. That's the best place to catch up with us. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, and look forward to speaking to you all soon. Goodbye.